This episode of the Royal Ocean Film Society is brought to you by Squarespace. Being the hipsterish 90s kid that I am, one of the holiday treats I was most looking forward to this year was the continuation of one of my favorite television cartoons from when I was growing up, Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie.
I wonder if I'll ever find them.
I didn't expect anything all that wonderful from it, and I didn't really get anything all that wonderful. For the most part, the Jungle Movie was an over-the-top but pleasant enough 90-minute add-on to satisfy questions the original show never really needed to answer in the first place, but that said, I don't think the fact that a new film was greenlit to begin with has nothing more to do with than a bunch of misplaced 90s nostalgia. The Jungle Movie may not have been anything special, but it did at least serve as a kind of gentle reminder of why the original show was so special, and why I at least think it's on a level that matches the sophistication of something like Calvin and Hobbes and the timelessness of Charles Schulz's Peanuts.
Maybe Lucy's right. Of all the Charlie Browns in the world, you're the Charlie Browniest.
On the surface, the premise of the show was never really anything all that exciting. A bunch of inner-city kids, including a football-headed kilt-wearing boy named Arnold, go to school and deal with a bunch of normal everyday problems that normal everyday kids deal with. But that premise is actually part of the reason why I think the show is so special. Nostalgia for the 90s may be completely ridiculous, but they were at least a unique time for American cartoons, where a small group of series stood out from the rest as not being set in a fantasy world, not centering around superheroes or extraordinarily gifted characters, and not being straightforward comedies, but instead shows set in the real world, and centering on average kids dealing with familiar issues. For lack of a better word, cartoons about life. A kind of distinctly American cartoon that's become virtually extinct ever since. But of all those, I think Hey Arnold stands out as the best. Not because it's the funniest or because it's the best drawn, but because it's perhaps the deepest. Because it's a show with a real and honest emotional depth.
I sense another one of your so painfully illuminating boyhood problems.
Beyond Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes, I think one of the best comparisons you could make is with the young adult novels of Judy Blume. Novels which never existed to lecture or instruct or talk down to younger audiences, but to just simply reflect what they were going through already. Novels whose legacy writer Joyce Maynard epitomized by saying, "They may never become classics, but they are among the first juvenile books to abandon happy endings, the notion of perfect parents, and images of children whose most serious problems are getting a horse or a paper route." And I think the same can be said for Hey Arnold. The series may have its silly overblown episodes, but the heart of the show reflects childhood in that exact same way. These are kids with real thoughts and opinions and fears and hopes and dreams. Consider the series' likely best character, Helga, and the backhanded way in which she rudely treats Arnold, only to turn around and quietly profess her secret undying love for the little football head.
How I revile his very existence, and yet I love him. His awkward gait, his half-lidded gaze, his brave, if misguided, concern for those less fortunate.
But what's just as compelling is her home life, where she constantly feels thoroughly inadequate and unloved, living in the shadow of her perfect older sister and her parents' lack of attention.
My mom? My mom wouldn't notice me if I was an alien pod person chanting Hare Krishna and spitting nickels.
In fact, consider the way most of the adult characters are written. Very few are the wise old mentors typically seen in children's shows, but instead characters who are just as flawed as their younger counterparts, and who are more importantly, vocal about just how unhappy or just plain miserable adulthood is.
Kid, you have no idea what my life is like. It ain't pretty, let me tell you.
As strange as it sounds, there's a very real thread of sadness throughout the entire show. So many episodes involve Arnold befriending some sort of outcast and attempting to help them re-enter or just cope with the world around them. Sometimes to success.
Thanks, Arnold. Thanks a lot.
But other times not.
It's people I don't understand. You see, Arnold, it's time for me to leave here.
Pigeon Man may have a bit of a silly ending, but it's proof that the show was willing to explore deeper themes by stepping into far more emotional subject matter, and that its creators trusted that its younger audience could handle tougher ideas.
Goodbye, Pigeon Man.
But that's not to suggest that Hey Arnold was ever dark, or that it veered into something horribly mawkish. On the contrary, if it was anything, it was melancholic. Consider, one of the central themes of the show, I think, is disappointment, and learning how to deal with it. Arnold and the rest of the gang are constantly facing situations that they can't do anything about. Arnold can't change the fact that his family doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving the normal way, or the fact that his longtime crush turns out to be a jerk. Helga can't make her parents notice her, and Phoebe finds out that the pop star she's in love with is a fraud. The real-world brilliance at play isn't that the kids have to gear up and find some way to solve the problem at hand, but that they just simply have to accept the thing that's disappointing and move on.
Have you ever noticed that sometimes when you think you like a person from far away, you find out they're not what you thought they were when you get up close?
What do you mean?
Well, there's this girl I thought I liked, but then it turned out that when I got to know her, we had nothing in common.
Moments like these aren't portrayed as defeating or anywhere remotely depressing, but as growth, as a hard truth of reality now learned.
Anybody could be fooled by a handsome face. Even someone as smart as you.
You're right. I guess you should never meet your heroes.
This is the kind of honesty I'm talking about. There's a very deep but simple poignancy, I think, in stories like these. A poignancy that doesn't lecture, but that maintains a sense of gentleness and is performed in a graceful and quiet way. Actually, that said, if you were to pin just one simple thing the recent Jungle movie was lacking, that may very well have been it. Any sense of quiet. Look to so many of the old episodes and you'll find a familiar setup. Characters allowed to just sit and think and nothing more. How many cartoons have ever done that? You know what? Ignore me. Maybe I'm just being nostalgic. Extra special thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If you don't know, Squarespace has beautiful, amazing award-winning templates that you can use to build a website for any kind of business that you have. If you're a musician, or a filmmaker, or a photographer, or an animator, or anything else, Squarespace is the perfect platform to showcase your work. There's nothing to install, there's nothing to patch, there's nothing to upgrade ever, and best of all, it's incredibly easy to use. You can go to squarespace.com/RoyalOceanFilm to save 10% off your first order. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out my other videos, you can click right over here. If you'd like to support Royal Ocean on Patreon, you can click here. And if you haven't, please be sure to subscribe.